works includes analysis of Indonesia's national long-term development and policy recommendations for implementing the circular economy at Indonesian MSMEs. She also had held other roles in strategy and operations for numerous Southeast Asian-based startups. Now, for the next 35 minutes, Ms. Zahrah will lead this afternoon's discussion, as well as introducing our speakers' credentials. So, without further ado, I'd like to pass over the stage to Ms. Zahrah. Ms. Zahrah, the stage is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Ms. Shahnaz, for the introduction and also the opportunity and time to moderate today's webinar. So as previously mentioned by Ms. Shahnaz, today's ASEAN Researchers Network and Energy and Climate Change, or ARNECC Paper Talk, will discuss and also delve deeper into a research paper developed by Ms. Ayu Pratiwi Musyasharo with the title of Rethinking Energy Security in Indonesia from a Net Zero Perspective. So before we start the presentation session, I would like to firstly introduce our expert speaker for today's webinar, which is Ms. Ayu Pratiwi Musyasharo. So Ms. Ayu currently holds the position of Research Associate at the Energy Unit of AREA, or Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia. And in this role, she supports the Director of Research Strategy and Innovation in managing various research projects covering topics such as carbon pricing and solar supply chain. In 2022, she also founded Energy Justice Indonesia, stemming from her master's thesis on just access to electricity, Energy Justice in Indonesia's Rural Electrification Program, which she completed during her master's studies in environmental science at Wageningen University. And then to also briefly introduce the Energy Justice Indonesia, or EGI, the organization aims to address the disparities in energy justice research in Indonesia through three key initiatives, which are Diplomacy Lab, NRE House, and also Community Hub. And each initiative aims to engage individuals passionate about energy in diverse backgrounds. So I think without further ado, I would like to invite and also welcome Ms. Ayu to deliver the presentation. For Ms. Ayu, the time is yours now.
Thank you so much, Ms. Zahrah and Ms. Shahnaz. Please give me some time. I will share my screen now. Can you see it now?
Yes, we can see it clearly now.
Okay. Oops, sorry. Okay. So yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for ASEAN Centre for Energy, especially the ACCEPT second, or ASEAN Climate Change and Energy Project Phase 2 team for having me. I'm delighted to be here. A little bit background about my today's presentation. It stemmed from a research project that I undertook during my internship at PBL, Netherlands Environmental Assessment Agency. PBL is a Dutch research institute that offers advice to the Dutch government on environmental policy and regional planning matters. I see that I think yesterday ACE also invited speakers from PBL to Indonesia, talking about modeling. And the project aimed to investigate strategies from the energy sector to achieve net zero emissions in 4 significant greenhouse gas emitters in Asia, which include China, India, Indonesia, and Japan. And in this upcoming presentation, I'll focus on Indonesia, examining the correlation between achieving net zero emissions and the country's energy security agenda, with a title, like you show in the screen, Rethinking Energy Security in Indonesia from a Net Zero Perspective. This study was recently published with the same title as well, as shown here and on your screen in Indonesian Journal of Energy. I began this study by collecting some prevalent notions as to Indonesia energy security. And for most people, when we talk about energy security in Indonesia, usually the things that come to their mind are the denomination of fossil fuels in the country, as well as the significant greenhouse gas emission of Indonesia, coals and more coal. So it's more about fossil fuels, emissions, and it just makes me wonder, are there any positive narration around it? So as a social researcher, it becomes important for me to explore narratives built upon a certain topic, for instance, energy security and net zero. And drawing from this, I was wondering if there's alternative where narratives built upon energy security in Indonesia could be redressed with other concepts. This is where the study was inspired to employ net zero as a framework to address energy security issues in Indonesia. Rethinking energy security from net zero perspective is so crucial for aiding countries not only in decarbonizing their energy systems, but also in mitigating geopolitical hegemony over energy resources. And in Indonesia, most energy security studies concentrate on unlocking the country's substantial renewable potential, as evidenced by Kumar in 2016 and Rahman et al. In 2021. And furthermore, examinations of net zero in Indonesia are often limited to providing an overview of net zero transition within the power sector, so very sectoral studies of Southeast Asia as a collective entity rather than focusing on certain individual member in ASEAN member state. Exploring usually multiple scenarios as presented by Handayani et al. In 2022, or outlining a roadmap to achieve net zero in the energy sector. So very sectoral, very limited, and not in a more comprehensive or holistic way in examining net zero and energy security. Hence, the objective of this study is to fill this gap by assessing in what way and to what extent Indonesia can safeguard its energy security from net zero perspective. And it becomes the foundation of the objective from this study. And to accomplish the research objective, which is to fill this gap by assessing to what extent Indonesia can safeguard its energy security from net zero perspective. Two research questions were formulated. The first one is trying to comprehend the current energy system in Indonesia. Second one is to examine or analyze how energy system progress from the current strategies to net zero. And the methodology applied in the study include primarily conducted in quantitative research, because this is the usual practice in climate studies, and also document analysis. Around 15 documents were used in the study, and then for models, I use image 3.2. Well, in the study, actually with PBL, I use 4 models, but in this paper, I focus on 1 model only for specification. And then for scenarios, I use 3 scenarios that include current policy, NDC, and Glasgow, which for each scenario, it refers to the first one, signify the business as usual scenario without any ambitious pledge or commitment in climate change mitigation and adaptation. NDC, it refers to NDC itself for Indonesia. And in this case, I use the NDC, the first NDC of Indonesia, not the enhanced version, because again, as a kind reminder, this is the study that I conducted in 2022 before Indonesia, before it was announced for enhancing the NDC for Indonesia. And then the Glasgow, basically this is where net zero of Indonesia, the commitment itself was embedded in the scenario. On the result and discussions from this paper, basically, when I look at the current strategies of Indonesia, especially in the energy sectors, it covers a wide range of regulation and product standards to reduce energy efficiency. Basically, energy efficiency becomes the prominent strategy from the government to accelerate the energy security in Indonesia. And also renewables becomes one of the strategy that the country is trying to aspire, and which includes hydro, geothermal, and solar PV, account for more than 50% of the country's national electricity supply planned by 2030. And also there's an effort to electrify transportation. We have seen a lot of EVs initiative in Indonesia now, not only for 2-wheelers, but also for 4-wheelers right now. Unfortunately, the key challenges persist, and that include the compounding factors of population growth, urbanization, which are typical challenges that emerging economies have to deal with. And also it's exacerbated by inadequacy of robust enforcement of the existing regulation, limited access to financial instrument, and also subsidies, which present more hurdles for the countries to achieve energy efficiency improvement. And then there's stringent local content requirement, which Indonesia usually call egg and chicken problem. Some people are trying to avoid this term, but a lot of people still stick to this term. I personally still think it's debatable term, but most of people still use it. So if you're not very familiar with this, so basically this LCR is a government effort to increase domestic products use, domestic industry in the circulation distribution of domestic products in Indonesia. For renewables, I think it's around 40% that renewables have to incorporate domestics in the production. And yeah, again, subsidies becomes one of the disincentivize for the country to accelerate renewables development in the country, because the benefit that the program is expecting is goes to mostly to less than 1% wealthiest of the country, where for the poor it's only it's very limited. Sorry, it's the other way around. Sorry. So the benefit goes mostly to the wealthiest for more than 40%, but for poor it's only like less than 1% of it. So even though the number are quite striking between the two, so it's not quite beneficial for subsidy to with the existing scheme to persist. And back to the scenarios result. As you can see in the figure 1, the total emission of Kyoto gases, if Indonesia is keen on achieving a zero target, as you can see from the Glasgow scenario, the orange one, NDC and Glasgow shows quite similar trajectory, but in Glasgow, it shows more drastic reductions if we compare to NDC. But if we see the current policy, which is the blue one, is quite, you can see there that the trajectory is off track. So this is from the scenario that we use in this modeling scheme. And then for the emission of CO2 per sector by 2060, you can see that the energy is dominating the CO2 emission in Indonesia. And then for primary energy mix, so the models calculate the primary energy mix and also total emission of Kyoto gases and total emission of CO2 per sectors until the end of the century. You can see here that from the figure 3, for Glasgow, it shows that primary energy mix in Indonesia, fossil fuels still visible from the overall mix, but then again, if compared to current policy and NDC scenarios, it shows a more striking reductions. And you can see that the right one, nuclear, shows in one of the, and I think it's 2080, it starts showing some significant increase. And renewables, especially from biomass, it also shows quite significant increase there. And the significant contribution of the energy sector to CO2 emission in Indonesia by 2060 can be attributed to actually two main factors. The first one is the prevalence of fossil fuels in the country's primary energy mix, as depicted in the figure 3, and also a substantial increase in energy consuming appliances in household and machines in industry between 2022 and 2060. Consequently, it's crucial for Indonesia to expedite advancements in technology efficiency within the country's primary energy mix. Simultaneously, there is a pressing need to promote cleaner energy sources such as biomass, solar, and fossil fuels with CCS technology to enhance the shares in the primary energy mix. So overall, what we can conclude from this study, highlight 1, we can say that from the study result, we see that fossil fuels will still dominate Indonesia primary energy mix until the end of century if we only rely on business as usual or NDC pathways. Therefore, CCS, carbon capture storage, becomes an interesting solution for Indonesia to ensure its emissions under control. And we also rely that CCS projects are now start blossoming currently in Indonesia, estimated that we have around 8 gigaton carbon storage capacity. Yeah. And for highlight 2, in addition to that, Indonesia needs to also catapult its renewable shares at least 50%, 50%, between 2025 to 2050. the share of new renewable energy in the energy mix in 2021 hit, I think it was around 11%, according to the Ministry of Energy of Indonesia, and had initiated several efforts to accelerate the 23% renewable energy target by 2025. Highlight 3, considering energy crisis in Indonesia is still prominent. For instance, in 2022, pitch black village in Indonesia, meaning the village without any electricity source at all. We have so many villages with no electricity access at all. Therefore, it becomes imperative for the country to raise its energy efficiency bar to alleviate pressure on strained energy system. And then the last one, exacerbated by aggressive economic activities and energy demand in Indonesia. Overall, we can say that Indonesia is making progress indeed in safeguarding its energy security. Nonetheless, it lacks the necessary speed and rigor to achieve its net zero target. So for future study, if I may suggest what can be improved, what can be enhanced, and what can be further studied from insight collected from this study, is that the first one, probably further analysis that examines greenhouse gas emission reductions from non-energy sector for the same scenarios using different integrated assessment models. Second one, further analysis that examines insight from this study using a qualitative approach to provide a full-fledged recommendation on how Indonesia can move forward, can move toward net zero state. Now the notion or the discussions around just transition is quite prominent. Maybe that's something, a good start to enhance the insight from this study. And also the third point will be work well for future research to leverage the key findings of this study to assess the net zero transition in Indonesia in a just manner. Because this is also something that I'm currently doing as a social researcher. So, but how to connect energy challenges, energy issues, and discussion around it from a just perspective. So this is where I'm trying to reach out to you. If you are having initiative or idea, or you share the same passion, similar passion in energy justice, we'd love to hear more about it. Please follow us on Instagram. Right now we have Instagram. We are small team right now at Energy Justice Indonesia. As Mishana explained in the beginning, that this is a initiative that I started in 2022 as the continuation of my thesis in the Netherlands. And basically what we're trying to achieve is helping to ameliorate the effects of energy poverty issues in Indonesia. So looking forward to your fruitful idea and also to fruitful discussion from this today's presentation. Hopefully we have a fruitful discussion. Thank you so much. I will stop my presentation here.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ayu, again for your presentation and also your findings in the Rethinking Energy Security in Indonesia from a net zero perspective paper. So I think the research paper itself already indicates so many insightful findings and also new perspective, especially on the importance for Indonesia to develop strategies and also secure its energy future, not only see it from the energy security side, but also to see it through the net zero lens from our framework, so that Indonesia does not only address the impact of the present and also future energy crisis, but also to mitigate the consequences of climate risk, which is through the renewable energy solutions and etc. So now, after the presentation from Ms. Ayu, we will move on to the Q&A session. But before we start the session, I would also like to invite all the participants to ask and also raise questions based on the previous presentation by Ms. Ayu. So if anyone have any question to ask, please feel free to write your question in the Q&A feature in Zoom. And we will try to read and also answer the question during the session. And as we wait for the participants to type their question, please allow me to ask the very first of several questions, actually, that I have for Ms. Ayu regarding this very interesting paper. I think for my first question, it actually relates to the policy framework in Indonesia and also its correlation to the energy targets. And as what you mentioned in the research paper, one of the potential challenge for Indonesia to achieve energy security within a net zero framework is due to the absence of legal framework and also the alignment between the current policies and Indonesia's net zero goal. And because of that, in your opinion, how can policy frameworks be enhanced to align with Indonesia's net zero emission goal? And what are the key barriers to implementing the effective policies in the energy sector?
Thank you, Ms. Zahrah, for a very interesting question. So basically, from what I found from the study, if Indonesia is committed to satisfy its net zero target, again, it becomes imperative for the country to advance energy efficiency measures, incorporate carbon capture and storage technology to control the emissions, because we can see that the fossil fuels still dominate the country's primary energy mix until the end of the century. And also how to improve the energy efficiency. But again, this is the study speaking from only the scenarios and modeling results. But if we have a larger point of view when we talk about, the socio-economic situation and also the future uncertainty that we have not been included in the current scenarios, we can have a lot of, we can have a more deep discussion on that. So that's what the scenario says at the moment. And for the key barriers that I found so far, of course, the inadequacy of robust enforcement of existing regulations become the major hurdles for Indonesia to achieve a net zero and also safeguarding its energy security. And stringent local content requirement, as I say in one of the slides, that it becomes major challenge to accelerate renewable energy development in the country. And also subsidies. It's still, I would say, debatable discussion because of the nuanced socioeconomic politic factors around it. So that's what the model says. And the scenarios and the document analysis that I did in this study. But if we take a look at a larger view, usually in Indonesia, in Southeast Asia especially, there's 4 approaches conducted when it comes to addressing climate change challenges and also energy security. In this case specifically, usually it's either strengthening economy-wide commitment, expand coverage of the commitment, or we go to sectoral commitment. We try to strengthen the sectoral commitment or add new policies. And for Indonesia, as far as I observe, we tend to the 4th approach, which is try to add new policies. And the problem from this approach would be if we have reshuffle in the governmental level, it will lead to sporadic policies regime, I would say, which can be more bottlenecks, add more burden to the existing bottleneck that we have at the policy framework. So that's my answer to you. Hopefully it answered your question.
Yes, thank you very much, Ms. Ayu, for your answer. Yeah, I also echoed your answer regarding how the policy can also work to align with the net zero emission goals that we have in Indonesia, where it's also interesting that regarding the 4 approaches to also address the climate change as well as trying to keep up with the energy security problems, especially in Southeast Asia country, and also how Indonesia should try to add new policies. But again, to keep in mind the bottlenecks that we may have, especially in terms of political will too, and how it also play a big role for Indonesia to achieve the net zero emission goal. Yes, I totally agree with that. And then I think we also already have several questions in the Q&A session here. The first question is from Alex Hong. Are there plans to mobilize agriculture feedstock to create biofuel or energy for Indonesia? Yeah. Maybe you can also answer that, Ms. Ayu.
As far as I understood, agriculture feedstock, at the moment we have a quite, how to say, commitment to work on biomass now. We have a commitment to work on the biomass as one of the promising resources to accelerate our renewables. The commitment is there, but for the roadmap, as far as I understood, it still remains to be seen compared to the other initiatives, let's say like CCUS at the moment, and also because the coals, the fossil fuel are still become the dominant energy resources in the country. So the initiatives, the solutions are centered around how we can produce, how we can safeguard energy security using fossil fuels with a cleaner, quote unquote, cleaner manner, I would say. So CCUS becomes a promising solution at the moment to control the emissions. So biomass and other, I think solar PV also becomes one of the top topic when it comes to renewable energy and also how to address energy security issue in Indonesia. But I think biomass agriculture feedstock at the moment is still, I would say, still lacking now. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, noted on that, Ms. Ayu. Yes, yeah, we can also see that the commitment is there, but again, I think the big reliance in Indonesia on fossil fuel is still bigger, and that's why in your paper you also suggest that we also have to conduct more information and also implement more on the CCS technologies to reduce the carbon emission itself. Yes. And then we also have a next question. This one is from Dr. Naish. This question is regarding the scenario modeling often relies on assumptions about the availability, cost, and also performance of existing and emerging technologies for decarbonization, such as renewable energy or CCUS. However, the pace of technological innovation and adoption is difficult to predict the modeling accuracy. Perhaps Ms. Ayu can also share your thoughts on this question.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Sarpanes. I know Dr. Sarpanes, we have a project together. Hope you had a great day today. Thank you for the question. So scenario modeling basically are not predictions and also are not something that we say, okay, this is what the model say, we got to follow it. No, but it's helpful tool. This is the definition that I use for myself. The scenario modeling is a helpful tool to explore the future because it's better than nothing, right? So that's one thing. Second one is, so from that point, I think it's becomes more logical if we treat scenario modeling as an input, as a additional information that can help how we can deal with certain issues, especially from the forward looking. And I agree with you that the pace of technological innovation and adoption is difficult to predict the modeling accuracy. That's why when we have information from scenario modelings, we treat it as a nice input, helpful input, but not necessarily as a, how to say, fit for all or best for all solutions, especially when we use the future answer into the current problem that we have, because there's so much that we don't know yet, but it's nice to have. I hope that answered your question, Dr. Sarpanes.
Yes. I also agree with you, Ms. Ayu, regarding how modeling is actually a very helpful tool for us to also explore the future. But again, at the end of the day, we can treat the scenario modeling results as an additional input for us, although we probably cannot use it for the general situation because there are plenty of assumptions and plenty of things that we cannot control and also cannot know. Cannot translate it to the model itself, but again, it will be a very useful tool for us to use for the future and also to further use for the policy making and etc. And then we also have a second question actually from Dr. Naish. For energy security reason, do you think it's wise to completely phase out fossil fuel-based energy and shift to renewable energy? This question is a reflection of what is happening in Europe now, whereby new coal plants were opened due to the Russia-Ukraine war.
Mhm. Yeah, for energy security reasons, of course, we have to prioritize energy security as the main, how to say, the main rationale of how to address or how to approach this challenge. So of course, completely phase out fossil fuels will not become an efficient solution in this case, especially if we take a look, if we speak from a larger point of view when we talk about just transition, especially where emerging green industry are now entering in Southeast Asia, especially Indonesia right now. If we are not very careful in planning and also addressing the repercussion that emerge from that, of course, there's opposition that come from the labor, and it happens a lot from EU. If we hear a news from Yellow Vest in France that there's opposition from the labor about emerging green industry because the industry plan to completely reduce or even phase out the fossil fuels. So this is something that we need to be careful of. That's if we talk only from energy security reason, but we also, if we talk about this, if we talk about this matter from environmental sustainability perspective, that's become another discussions. So the solution or the approach, the promising solution that I can share or I can suggest with you is that try to have a more nuanced package of solutions in this case. And there's an interesting theory, it's called country platform. Basically, it attempts to make some adaptations to the country context, socioeconomical capacity, and how to make sure, especially international development assistance, either financing or the capacity building can be smoothly adopted by the country as the recipient. And this is where just energy transition partnership was very, very how to say was emerged in this discussion. So if we understand the country platform of certain country, in this case Indonesia, and then try to adopt or try to enact some approach that can adopt the country platform, and then try to use it as the background rationale of how addressing energy security issues, we can come up with some package of solution that is trying to ameliorate the opposition from the locals, but also without sacrificing the environmental sustainability needs and also interests from the energy security reasons. There's four quadrant in this country platform. They usually, for Indonesia, they say, I know it's very social sciences, but it's very interesting study actually. So basically what they say that for a country like Indonesia, the narrow dispersed approach is interesting, because the narrow meaning that a certain group people making decisions, but they have dispersed influence that have deep and breadth of influence until to the grassroots level. So basically, not everyone can make decision, but they can receive input from all group of communities. So I think that's quite interesting to look at. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, completely agree with that, Ms. Ayu. Yes, I think based on your answer, I can say that basically we cannot completely phase out because in terms of from the perspective from the energy security side, but again, what we can do is to carefully planning the strategy, not just from the energy side, but also to see it from the socio-economic and also from the environmental sustainability, where we can also do this by understanding the country platform to come up with the package. Yes, and then we also still have two questions actually. I will ask The first one is that, Bu Ayu, how exactly can we circumvent around the LCR and unattractive pricing schemes for renewable electricity? What changes will be needed? And considering your paper stresses that Indonesia should focus on increasing the share of renewables by 50% to achieve its net zero energy target.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's actually, thank you so much for the questions. It's actually the question that we have been asking around. And the answer usually is the egg and chicken problem. And I will always say, what is the egg and what is the chicken? Because if we talk about the LCR and then we want to accelerate the renewable development in Indonesia, there must be a priority here. And for Indonesia, as far as I understood, energy poverty issues are still prominent because, like I shared with you in one of my slides, that at least until 2022, we have 200 villages. More than 200 villages are still pitch black, meaning it's like, like hungry people. They need to eat first before thinking to work, to study, or to make some achievement, or to win something. So the same analogy also applies to energy poverty issue in Indonesia. So they need electricity first, they need energy first, they need the access first, and then we can have more discussion after they have the access. So if we go from that point of view, LCR probably is not quite helpful in this case. But then again, because Indonesia is governed by a different line of ministry agencies with different priorities, different strategies. So for LCR, the main concern is the denomination of non-domestic producers, the products that can kill the domestic industry in Indonesia. So if we talk from that point of view, it's logical, but then again, it's not helpful and efficient to tackle the energy security issues in Indonesia. So that's why that's quite also political. So that's why this is one of the hurdles that hinder Indonesia to move forward to a more secure energy.
Yes, thank you very much, Ms. Ayu, for your answer. Yes, I think we can, based on the several questions that we have, we can see how it actually, again, depends on the priority from the government side, which is whether we want to prioritize from the energy side to secure our energy, or we also want to prioritize from the economical side, like that. And then we have the last question, actually. This question relates more into the modeling side, which is the model made also calculating the emissions from making electrical vehicle?
Indeed, so it calculates the industrial processes, which also include, the industry for transportation. So this is also ongoing debate in Indonesia. So EV itself probably are not do not produce emissions, but the production process, the distribution also remain questions. So we can have a lot of discussion on that, but I think because of the limited time, maybe we can have another time for to discuss this. But thank you for the question.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. Also, thank you very much, Ms. Ayu, for your answer. Yes, and I think we can also probably talk about this more on the next ARNECC Paper Talk that we will have next month. And yes, okay, well, again, thank you very much, Ms. Ayu, for answering the question. And also thank you to all the participants who have been actively participate in the Q&A session. However, again, due to the time constraints that we have, we must cut short today's Q&A session. However, before we end the session, I would also like to give the opportunity to Ms. Ayu to give a brief closing statement to end our insightful discussion for today's webinar.
Yeah, thank you so much for Ms. Zahrah, Ms. Shana, ASEAN Centre for Energy and Access to team, and also for participants for granting your time to be here. I hope insight from this study, you find it quite insightful to enhance your current research projects. And I also hope that it's does not stop here. So discussion around this study will still be continuous after these discussions, after this the webinar, and hopefully we can collaborate and to achieve not only a safe energy in Indonesia, and not only to achieve energy security in Indonesia, but also how to transition to net zero Indonesia. I think it's our dream as well, all of us, hopefully.
Yes, hopefully. Thank you very much, Ms. Ayu, for your closing statement. And to close the session, I would also like to give a brief summary based on Ms. Ayu's presentation and also the discussion that we have during the Q&A. So for today's ARNECC Paper Talk, we had learned that Indonesia currently is making progress, but still lack in the necessary speed and also rigor to achieve its net zero target. And instead of completely phasing out a fossil fuel, we can see that Indonesia's energy system is leaning toward phasing down, and how carbon capture and storage emerged as the prominent and also promising solution to manage the country's emission. And it also becomes imperative for Indonesia to significantly elevate the share of renewable, particularly in solar and also biomass, to at least 50% in the country's primary energy mix. And moreover, energy poverty remains a prominent issue in Indonesia's energy system, necessitating ongoing efforts to also enhance the country's energy efficiency measures. And also based on our discussion, we can see that in terms of how policy frameworks and also key barriers can be implemented to keep policy in energy sector, we can see that advanced energy efficiency is one measure that we need to incorporate along with CCS and also improve the renewable energy share. And then we can also see that key barriers such as law enforcement and also policy development must be finished to enhance the energy security. And subsidies is also considered as a debatable discussion due to the socio-economic and also political conditions of it. But Indonesia can strengthen the sectoral commitment as well as enhancing the stakeholder collaboration to move towards the net zero. And then another point that I would also like to point out in this summary is on the scenario itself, where Ms. Ayu also mentioned that scenario model is an instrument that is very useful for us to estimate and also to predict the future at some point, but we can also see the result as a guidance for shaping the pathways to several issues. And it is agreed that maybe some data might be difficult to be predicted, but it is also important to have and also consider those assumptions for more realistic input to the country. And I think that will be all from me today as the moderator for this ARNECC Paper Talk. Again, thank you very much for our distinguished speaker, Ms. Ayu, for the insightful presentation on your research paper, as well as the fruitful discussion that we have today. And to end this webinar, I would like to pass the session back to our MC, Ms. Shahnaz. For Ms. Shahnaz, the time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Zahrah, for moderating the discussion. I'd like to also extend a heartfelt gratitude to Ms. Ayu Pratiwi for the insights shared today in regards of rethinking energy security in Indonesia from a net zero perspective. Moving on, the next agenda will be a photo session between our speaker, Ms. Ayu, and moderator, Ms. Zahrah. To Ms. Ayu and Ms. Zahrah, please be ready and give your biggest smile to the camera. Okay, nice. I'll now lead the countdown. 3, 2, 1, smile. Okay, another pose, please. Yeah. 3, 2, 1, smile. All right, thank you, Ms. Ayu and Ms. Zahrah. To Ms. Ayu, thank you again for lending your precious time to share your findings on how Indonesia should achieve energy security with a net zero perspective in mind. This topic is indeed something worth discussing as Indonesia enters a new leadership era following the conclusion of the general election, as well as supporting our upcoming works in constructing the newest rendition of the ASEAN Energy Blueprint and brand new ASEAN Renewable Energy Long-Term Framework. We hope that the discussion today can be a food for thought for all of the audience, as well as an aid to create further productive discourse in regards of Indonesia's efforts on greenhouse gas emissions reductions in pursuant of a net zero future, but also in tandem with maintaining energy security. Finally, this event has approached its end. Thank you, everyone, for attending, as well as your lively questions. We will see you again in the next episode of ARNECC Paper Talks. Because a gentle reminder, ARNECC Paper Talks will be held monthly on every fourth Thursday, which means we might see each other again in May. So stay tuned in our social medias, newsletter, and website to obtain more information in regards of ARNECC Paper Talks, as well as all things net zero in Southeast Asia. So yeah, I think I'll just bid you all goodbye and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone.